Working in a consultation with a client, we discovered the time he was wasting with his floor plans and his door tags. Basically, every day he used to copy a previous drawing, go to his new project, and paste it like so. So after renaming his new project, um, so he opened it, and after reusing the door tags, of course, first um, bring in his XREF for his base plan. So after reusing some of his door tags into his new drawing, so he realized that the scale of his new drawing was bigger, so he basically started scaling his door tag, guessing the size to a size that was about right. So after copying some of his door tags around, he proceeded to manually number them. Just when he thought he was done, my client realized that some of his door tags were on the wrong layer. Anyway, with some optimization techniques, we could avoid all of the previous headaches and save plenty of time. So let me share with you today how we did it. So I'm gonna open the old drawing that my client was using, and one of the first things that I did was, before doing anything else, I inspected his door tag block to see if there are any issues with the geometry and so on. So that's what we did. So inspected the block. So this is the door tag that my client was using. As you can see, the name is door tag. And so in order to inspect it, so I open it a fresh drawing. Um, so so I open it again, a fresh drawing. Um, this is very this is a good idea because sometimes the drawing that somebody else used might have different settings or system variables, and it will cause issues whenever creating a block. So that's why I started with a file that was new, fresh, and empty file that I created myself to avoid these any problems. So I proceeded to copy his door tag and paste it into this new and fresh drawing, right? So first of all, I inspected the scale. So for the scale, I went to the properties and I saw that the scale factors were random numbers. So I set it to 1 to the correct scale, and I saw that it was huge, right? I could even dimension this, and this door tag was about 13 feet. So that's really wrong, right? So this cannot be the correct scale. So that's what one of the issues that my client was having. So in order to fix this, um, what we need is to introduce a scale chart. So the chart that I introduced my client was this over here. Let me share it over here. So basically this chart will help with the guessing of the scale of the block. So right now, um, uh, so that's we're gonna explain that chart later. But first of all, let's finish inspecting this block. So when I open this block on the block editor by right clicking on the block and pick block editor, I when I inspected it, this was a polyline with multiple sides which will cause issues, maybe not right now, but in the future definitely. So I wanted to simplify this, and then this was an attribute definition. So as you can see it on the quick property panel. So that was good, but since there were only two items on this block, I decided to create it from scratch because it is not a complex block, right? So I wanted to make sure that everything that was used on this block was correct. So then I started to create it from scratch. So again, on the side, what I did is I started with an attribute definition using the ATT shortcut to create an attribute. So once I did that, the main options to have checked is the lock position. And here I simply use the X, and for the prompt, it's gonna be the door type, of course. So default, I'll put X. And then for the justification, it's important here to pick the middle and center. So let's find it, middle center. And then for the text height, and this is where the chart was needed. So let me bring it back again. So as you can see on this chart, this is a architectural and also for engineering, and this is in imperial units because we are in the United States, so that's the units that we use, imperial. But if you use metric, I did a previous video also sharing both metric and imperial units. So for now, we're going to focus on imperial units, but it's the same procedure. So over here, we have all of the different scales that we can use in AutoCAD on our drawing with the viewport. So, but when creating a block, we need to follow the 1 inch equals 1 inch scales because this is the true scale. So at this scale, the standard text is 1/8 of an inch. However, usually on an office, on an architecture, even engineering office, we have so many notes on our drawing. So that's why we want one size lower, which is 330 seconds. That would be the correct size for our text or notes. Now you can pick either of those will work, but for this example, 330 seconds is the perfect size. So once we know that size, what we need to do is put it over here on the text height. So 330 seconds. And then simply click OK. So at this point, I can place it over here on my screen and I'm gonna zoom in. So what we need next, the final piece for this block is the geometry, the ellipse. We're gonna use the ellipse command for that. And then once we do that, let's specify the center of the ellipse. by picking this option, center. So I'm gonna pick over here on this X, like so. And then I'm gonna pick finally over here, like so. So then I'll proceed to, pick something that was about right, like so. So if I want to be more precise, I can move my attribute from the center and simply hover over here and pick this center point for the ellipse, like so. All right. So remember that my client used 3 digits number for his door tags. So just to make sure, we're gonna need more space on the sides. So I'm gonna stretch it a little bit more, something like so. All right. So once we have this ready, what we did was create the block with the shortcut B, of course. So um, over here, I proceeded to rename the block. I call it lazy door tag, and then click OK. So the base point for this block would be on the center, of course. So it's gonna be over here, click, like so, and then click OK. So that's the block that it is now in the correct scale, and I'm gonna show you now why. So the reason this block is now in the correct scale and we're gonna avoid any guessing on a scale in this block is because whenever, let's say, we are working now on a 1 of an inch scale drawing, we can simply go over here and find our scale. So if we set 1/8, so then our scale factor would be 96, right? So then we can simply go over here, go to the properties, and scale our block to 96 and press enter. So once we do that, and we, just to make sure, we can double click on the attribute and check on the text options, we can see that our height for our text is 9 inches. And just to double check that, let's go to our chart. And at 1/8 of an inch drawing, we see that our notes are at 9 inches. So we are 100% sure that this block has now the correct scale. So then this will of course avoid any guessing from my client at all. And he will have always this door block at the correct scale. So now that we solved that, the next thing that we wanted to help my client with was I wanted to give him the option to avoid manually number his door tags. So the way we did it was reusing a macro code that we used in a previous video on this channel. So in order to do that, I opened the tool palette over here. You can open it with Control 3. That's the shortcut for the tool palette. So I'm gonna lock it like so. So before I did anything, I stopped for a second and thought, where should be more beneficial to place this block? Would that be on the ribbon or maybe in a tool palette, right? So then I decided to place it on the tool palette because it will give me or give my client more flexibility and more options to even save more time. And we're gonna go over those options right now. Okay, so again, the tool palette was open, and one of the first things that we did is add this lazy door tag to the tool palette simply by selecting it with the left click and drag it to the tool palette like so. Oops, we have an error here. It says block lazy door is not found. That's okay because we forgot to save this drawing. So I'm gonna save with the Control S shortcut. As you can see, it's saved now. So let's try it again. So let's hold it and drag it to the tool palette like so. So over here on the tool palette, if we right click on it and pick properties, we can see that we don't have many options as we wish. However, we're gonna fix that. So let's close that. And basically the only reason why I drag it to the tool palette is so um, I can reuse the image for the lazy door tag. So let's now draw a rectangle really quick. And I'm gonna drag this rectangle to the tool palette like so. So once we did that, this will help us to create our door tag and give us more options and flexibility. So over here on this polyline, what I did is click properties, right click in properties. And then once over here, you can see that we have more different options. So first I'm gonna rename this basic door tag. And here, we're gonna right click on this to specify an image. So once we do that, we can click browse, and you can see that AutoCAD automatically created these icons over here because we previously dragged this block to the tool palette. So that way we can save some time on creating icons and so on. So again, here I can pick this icon, and then for the dark theme, I can use the lighter icon like so, and then click OK. So over here, I can simply click OK now, and you can see the lazy door tag is now here. So we don't need this anymore. So I'm gonna right click and delete it and say OK. So again, this is the real lazy door tag that we need, which will give us more options. So once we have that, of course, we don't need this anymore. So at this point, again, we're gonna right click here and pick properties. So on these properties, what we need is a way to add our previous macro code that we did on a previous video and simply paste it. And the way that we can do that is by picking on the use flyout and change it from yes to no. So once we did that, you can see that there is a command string option that is active so that we can use it to implement our custom macro code. So again, I'm gonna simply go and copy the previous code that we did on a video and paste it like so. So if you want an explanation very deep about this code, you can check the video later. But again, this is about optimizing door tags in AutoCAD. So over here, once we did that, of course, make sure that the block, in this case, lazy door tag, has the correct name, right? Because if not, this code won't work. But just to make sure that at this point everything is working, let's test it by clicking OK. So at this point, when we clicked the door tag, like so, we can see, if we zoom in, that indeed it's working. So now my client could avoid numbering his door tags manually, which is a big help for him because at an office, time is important because time is money also. So So now that we knew that the auto numbering for his door tags were working, um, so we proceeded to simplify some of his next steps. So basically, the next step that I wanted to simplify for my client was the idea of scaling. Yes. So I didn't want him to um, check the drawing scale and then manually scale his block accordingly. I wanted to do this automatically. So, and the way I did it was again going back to the lazy door tag and going back to the properties. So here, what I did is introduce a new piece of code, very small, but it's very useful. So what I did was over here on the tag option, sorry, before this slash, where the slash means it's a pause for the user, for my client to pick a point to insert his block. So right after that, I'm gonna paste the code that is gonna help us, which is this code. It's gonna help us to scale the block accordingly, depending on the dim scale that he used. So get bar dim scale, that's the new code that we introduced. And basically, let me accept that to show you why it's so helpful. So click OK. And again, for this point, so you always have to set up your dim scale anyway on your drawing. So there are many beneficials for this, but I'll do another video about dim scales to show you all of the benefits. But at this point, whenever my client um, needed to insert this block now, so he simply, if he's setting his block to 1/8, so he knew that the scale factor was 96. So that's the number that we're gonna need for the dim scale. So if we set the dim scale to 96, and then if we insert the lazy door tag now, you can see that it comes to a bigger scale. And if we check that scale now, or the text size, by double clicking on it and going to the text options, we can see that the text is now 9 inches, which is correct because according to our chart at 1/8, the text is supposed to be 9 inches for our notes. So isn't that great? Now again, just to show you another example, if my client was using another scale for the dim scale, for example 64, and he inserted his his door tag, you can see that it came again to the correct scale because this text was now 6 inches, and according to the chart, just to make sure it's correct, at 3/16 and 64, his text is supposed to be 6 inches, which is great, right? So now that we took care of the scale, so he doesn't have to guess, and he also doesn't have to he doesn't have to manually number, we proceeded to simplify the next step for my client, which was having this block always to the correct layer. So the way we did that was by again going to the lazy door tag and going to the properties. So over here, what we did was simply we could also add a piece of code over here to specify his layer, but a better way was to go under layer option and pick the layer that my client wanted for his door tags. So if let's see if the layer exists, and if it doesn't, let's gonna create it really quick. So let's create a layer using the layer panel, and over here we're gonna use this icon to create a layer. So the layer that my client wants this was on the A door tag. So the A door tag, and the color that he used was yellow. So I'm gonna pick yellow over here, and then all of the options are correct. So now that we go again to the properties, to the tool palette and then properties, we could pick under layer the correct layer for this specific block. So once we did OK and then test it, you can see that if we use the block now, you can see that it came in the correct layer, which is a door tag. So basically we did all of these steps to simplify the life of my client. And now let me show you what's going to happen now that my client has the correct block. So now, of course, he's going to have not this um, door tag block in his drawings, but he's going to have the lazy door tag block. So let's close that out for his old drawing, and let's um, see how more simplified his life is now. So let's close everything to start fresh. And from now on, what my client have to do is simply, let me go over here and erase that so we can, so whenever my client needs to start a new drawing now, of course, he's gonna keep going to his old drawing and then copy that, right? Copy, going to his new project and paste it over here. Of course, he's gonna rename it, right, accordingly. Um, and then once he open his drawing, of course, he's gonna want to attach his base plan as an excerpt, right? Like he usually does it. So extract, and then now all he have to do now is, of course, he's gonna want to check if the drawing scale is right. So he's gonna want to check a correct scale. So at this point, 1/8, let's say, is the correct scale for his drawing. So he's gonna come here and set up his dim scale, looking at the chart that I provide him. Of course, he know at 1/8, 96 is the scale factor for the dim scale. So he's gonna say dim scale 96, and then he's gonna be ready. Now my client liked it to start his doors tags from 100, the number 100. So he could do that simply by saying setting user 1 to 100. So then my client would be ready to add his door tags. So he will simply click on it and then click like so: 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, and so on. You have the idea. But at this point, he will be sure that his scale is correct, because again, it's 9 inches. You make sure that the layer is the correct layer, and so on. Hopefully, sharing these techniques will give you an idea of how you can optimize AutoCAD to simplify your life. Because